Welcome back to the Crooked Spine Show. I'm here live with Susan Jackson. We want to understand how to deal with chronic illness. And she'll talk about her situation, what she's going through in now the last 15, 20 years. But also what we talked about before the show is she is a phenomenal advocate through her knowledge, through her YouTube videos, through her, if you want to call it her blog, also her life story, how to get through this. Whatever you're dealing with, chronic illness, even sometimes short acute illness, when we take some months to actually get better, how do you, your family, your support group, even your doctors understand how to help you get through it both physically and mentally? So let's go right into it, Miss Susan. Tell me your story. What's going on 15, 20 years ago when you first were diagnosed with these things?
Well, it's a long story. I'll try to keep it very short. So the way this disease that I have works is it very often starts abruptly. One day you're fine and the next day you're very sick. And that's how it was with me. So March 1st, 2002, I was living a very active, healthy life. That happened to be a Saturday. We had 2 young boys. I had taken an exercise class at the Y while they were doing their swim class. We had friends over for dinner, typical family kind of life. And then I woke up on March 2nd feeling really sick. The worst sore throat I had ever had in my life, flu-like aches all over, and just total exhaustion. I felt like my limbs were filled with wet cement. I mean, just out. So I figured, like anyone would, I must have caught a flu.
Got it. Okay.
But 6 weeks later, the flu wasn't gone. And the next year was just kind of a blur of doctor's visits and lab tests. I saw dozens of specialists. No one knew what was wrong with me. I had hundreds of lab tests. Most things came out normal. Or if they were abnormal in a way that doctors weren't used to seeing, so they ignored it.
No red flags at this point.
Well, it still felt like the flu, but every day. And it was very up and down, which I didn't understand. So I come from a very analytical background.
What background?
My degree's in chemical engineering.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
So, that's my background. I've always been very analytical. So I started keeping track of once it went past the initial 2 weeks that you'd expect a flu, I started saying something's wrong here. Okay. And so I started keeping track of my symptoms. I graphed them. So I had these graphs that were like up and down, and I didn't understand what was going on. One day I'd feel pretty much back to normal, and I'd resume my normal activities. And then the next day I'd be back down flat on the couch, unable to do anything. So, and that's really one of the hallmarks of this disease. So finally, 1 year later, in March of 2003, I just happened to find a new primary care physician. We had been looking for one. She's just a couple miles from here. So, she was accepting new patients. So, that was it. It was just by chance. And she knew immediately that I had what's known in the US, unfortunately, as chronic fatigue syndrome. And I heard her say that, and I was like, that's not anything real. There's something really wrong with me. But I went home. She saw it from looking at my graphs, the ups and downs.
It worked.
Yeah, it did. See, analysis works. But I went home and I looked online, and the first thing that came up was a CDC page on chronic fatigue syndrome. Okay. So I started to think, okay, maybe this is real. And I went to the library and I got books out. And so these days, the rest of the world calls this disease myalgic encephalomyelitis, or ME. That's quite a mouthful, but at least it's a little more medical. The problem with chronic fatigue syndrome is the name is too vague. There are hundreds, maybe thousands of medical conditions that can cause fatigue. That's not really the hallmark of this illness. So that's why it took so long to get diagnosed. And once I met other patients, I found out I was one of the lucky ones, only a year to diagnosis. For many people, it's 5, 10, 15 years of not knowing what's wrong with them before they finally get diagnosed. So things are improving a little bit, but partly because the CDC saddled us with this name, chronic fatigue syndrome. It's hard to get the medical establishment to take notice.
It's
Um,
almost something to where it's there's not a medical, if you want to call it a test for it to say yes you have it. There's not the validity or the reliability of one test to say boom, this blood test came back positive for this, boom, where we has a combination of an MRI, CT, ultrasound, and boom, now we have an ICD-9 code for it, diagnosis code for this condition. Usually it's in our sense the secondary condition caused by something else.
right, but we do have a code now.
Good.
Um, Starting this fall, actually, this is brand new. We do finally have an
It just
IC
took
code.
forever, right? It just took forever.
Yeah,
Oh,
it did take forever. So there is some research going on. Finally, it's grown tremendously in the last 20 years for sure.
Good.
And luckily, this primary care physician I just happened to stumble on had other patients with ME/CFS. So she actually knew how to treat it, which is really rare among, it's not really taught in medical schools.
You got lucky in the
Yeah,
sense where
I got so lucky.
range. So this is a year and 3 or 4 months after you had initial symptoms of flu-like symptoms. How did your family deal with this process of you feeling good, not feeling good? How did work go? How did your life go?
Right. I mean, you just do what you have to. We had no idea what was going on. My thought at the time was, as soon as I find out what this is, I can fix it.
Yes.
I just need to know what it is, and then there'll be treatments, and then I can get on with my life. It never, or maybe rarely, occurred to me during that first year that this could be permanent.
Got it. Okay.
So getting a diagnosis was a double-edged sword. It was a huge relief to me to have a name for it, to know what it was, to know that other people had it. One of the first books I found on it, just at our local library, was a memoir. It explained some of the medical aspects of the illness, which was helpful, but it was this guy's experience. He and his wife both had it.
Okay.
And reading that, I mean, I just burst into tears reading that book because it was the first time in a year that something perfectly matched up with my own experience.
It's amazing when you have that connection to go, I'm not the only one. I now I know I'm not that special in the sense where there's someone else out there with the same condition.
It's huge. It's just huge. And I found, I was reading about a doctor who's a specialist in this. He was up near my hometown in Western New York State. So that, when I got a diagnosis, it was great knowing what it was and knowing that other people had it and that there were a couple, not very many, but a couple of specialists. The downside was trying to accept that I now had a chronic illness. I mean, that just blew my mind.
And was there when you look back on it, initial cause for all of this, or just boom, you woke up one day and had it?
Well, I know now that about 80% of ME/CFS cases begin abruptly like mine did and are caused by some kind of, often an infectious trigger.
Got it. Okay.
So probably I was exposed to some kind of infection. I happen to have the genetics that make me predisposed to ME/CFS, and I developed it.
So it wasn't a genetic component per se. Sorry. The genetic component versus more of your environment, I want to call it lifestyle, but more your environment.
So it's a combination of those.
Okay.
There was one great study done in New Jersey where they've got a great MECFS association there in the state, and they did this huge survey statewide. And what they found was people who were blood related had a 4 times greater chance of getting MECFS if there was someone in their family with it.
Okay. Okay.
But people who lived in the same household and were not blood related had a 9 times greater chance of catching it. So it is both genetic and infectious. The infections act as a trigger if you happen to have the right or the wrong genetics.
Phenotype and all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So
Medical.
it's amazing. So you do find it in a lot of families.
Okay.
And that is what happened with us, unfortunately. So
Wow.
I was starting to learn to live with it, to come to a place of acceptance that this was my life now. Like I said, luckily I had a doctor who did know how to treat some of the aspects of it. So I had some hope that life would get a little better.
Mm-hmm.
And then summer of 2004, and this time we saw the infection. There was an infection that kind of went through our household. We were on vacation visiting my husband's family in Oklahoma. And my husband and our younger son both got just a virus. We don't know what it was, but it involved a bad cough. They were both coughing for about 6 weeks, even after they felt better. So, I mean, who knows? It could have been a SARS type virus. Yeah, it was unidentified at the time. It happens all the time. Someone in your family starts coughing or
your normal environment. You're in Oklahoma versus Delaware, totally different.
Yeah. So those two were sick. My older son and I did not get sick.
Okay.
But after that virus, we started noticing in both of our sons some of the same things that I had experienced. Which was, I mean, as a parent, and they were only 6 and 10 at the time. As a parent, that is the worst possible scenario. We were terrified. The identifying characteristic of MECFS is that you can't tolerate exertion.
Got it. Okay.
And that's why I had those ups and downs at the beginning, and still do, because if you do too much, what we patients call crash.
Got it.
Okay. You're feeling a little better, you go out to the store or you take a walk, it's too much, and you're back on the couch the next day. And we started to see that very distinctive pattern in our sons, which was very frightening.
Yeah.
So by the end of that year, by December 2004, I mean, honestly, even though we recognized it, it was still very hard to accept.
Of course.
That our children might have this.
Why us? Why our kids?
Yeah, exactly. And, both of them were so vibrant and active, and, to see them laid low like that was just awful.
And you're going, okay, I have this as a lifelong condition at my age, after I finished college, after I've had kids. These kids haven't even grown up yet. Right. Now, do they have this lifelong condition? And with theirs being, this is presently 2022, you'd mentioned, I saw some of your posts, is where one of your children have done well with it, one still has some of it, or how they responded now? This is almost, I'm not good at math, so about 15 years later.
Right. So my younger son is 24 now. He was 6 when he got it. He's 24 now, 100% fully recovered.
Fantastic.
Very healthy, very active. He's working full time. He plays basketball and golf, and he's always doing something with his friends or his girlfriend. He's in great shape. What he had in his favor was his was always milder than mine and my older sons.
Okay.
So there was a study done of children with MECFS that showed that the people who had the greatest chance of recovery were those who got it young, who had it milder, whose symptoms were very up and down, like I've described. Like some people with this are so severely ill that they are bedridden all the time. So, for all three of us, we've always had the up and down kind.
Okay.
And, so he fit all that criteria. Oh, an abrupt start.
Got it. Okay.
From an infectious trigger. So he fit all that criteria. By age 16, he was fully recovered and off all medications and doing great. Yeah. Okay. My older son does still have ME/CFS. Things got a little more complicated for he and I because we both got tick infections as well. Okay. So we had found some treatments that were helping our sons. One aspect of ME/CFS is orthostatic intolerance, which is kind of an umbrella term. It encompasses conditions where you can't keep your blood pressure and heart rate steady when you're upright.
Got it. Okay.
Standing, but even sitting like I am now, without medication, my blood pressure drops, my heart rate goes way up, and it makes you feel very sick. I mean, some people actually faint from it. Only one of us was a fainter.
And with the medication, you had mentioned that a second ago, what medications help stabilize, I guess, your body chemically or biochemically so you can live a better quality of life? Or is it just vary per person?
Well, it's definitely per person. It takes a lot of trial and error because there are no official treatments yet. Okay. What my primary care physician did first, she told me one of the aspects of this disease is dysfunctional sleep. We can sleep 14 hours a night and our bodies never go into the deep stages, stage 3 and stage 4 sleep. So you feel like you're half awake all night. You wake up feeling still exhausted. And she knew how to treat that. And she said to me, this is the first thing to do because if you get better sleep, everything improves.
There you go.
She's absolutely right about that. So wow. She didn't treat it with sedatives, but with very low doses of certain antidepressants. Okay. That at the low doses, they don't actually have antidepressant activity, but they increase serotonin in the bloodstream. Okay. So you take those right at bedtime, and it mimics what a healthy body would normally do. Okay. Serotonin increases at night, helps you sleep deeply.
Wow.
So that helped with the orthostatic intolerance. That is critical. Many people don't even realize that's a part of their illness because, again, there's just not good knowledge in the medical community overall. But treating that makes a huge difference because when that orthostatic intolerance, which can involve POTS or orthostatic hypotension or other conditions, you can't be upright without feeling sicker. So treating that is a huge help.
In sick meaning off balance, dizzy, just not feeling well, blood pressure issues or symptoms of blood pressure issues, correct?
Well, this is the interesting thing. When I first read about OI, and when my older son and I first went to see a specialist, he said, "You have orthostatic intolerance." And I said, analytical me, I said, "I've read about that. We don't have that because neither of us has fainted. Neither of us feels dizzy. We don't get lightheaded." And he said, "Well, with ME/CFS, lots of times you just feel worse. Whatever your normal symptoms are, you feel sicker."
Okay.
And that's how it was for the two of us.
And what kind of medication was, I guess, prescribed for that? Or
yeah. So for the kids, what works really well for young kids and teenagers sometimes is Florinef. It's fludrocortisone.
Okay.
Its only real effect is to help the body hold on to more fluids and salt.
Got it. So more
that's one of our underlying problems is that our bodies can't hold on to fluids.
Okay.
So, normal life for us is drinking water constantly and unfortunately running to the bathroom constantly. There's an equation there.
Yeah. But being hydrated allows your blood pressure to be more stable. When you talk about positional blood pressure issues. I call positional hypertension or hypotension
Mm-hmm.
allows things to stabilize along with salt, help to retain the water, or electrolytes also, I'm assuming.
Right. So with both boys taking Florinef, and you take it in tiny, 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 tiny doses, taking Florinef along with lots of fluids and salt. I mean, at the time we were into they drank a lot of Gatorade.
Got it. Okay.
Eventually we got rid of the sugar and artificial colors and went with something.
Something else came out that was not Gatorade, because the Gatorade was around for so long. It was like the only staple out there.
Exactly. Yeah. That worked like a miracle for the kids.
That's awesome.
I mean, that got them both back to school. My older son was able to rejoin the band, which he had really missed. Awesome. They were both able to even play soccer, with some limits, but.
Sure. But it got their quality of life back to normal kids' quality of life. Those two things, be able to sleep well and be able to handle that fatigue because you didn't have the right hydration or that right, if you want to call it, blood pressure balance.
Right. Yes, exactly. Wow. So that made a huge difference for both of them. So they were both doing quite well. In spring 2007, my older son was in 7th grade. And like I said, he had just gotten back to school full time, rejoined band. He was really excited. He was doing really well. And all of a sudden he got sicker again. And this time he had sudden onset of knee pain.
Okay.
And there's a lot of tick disease in our area. I mean, the whole East Coast, but the whole country really, and the whole world at this point.
But the suburbs, the forest area, things like that.
And we love the outdoors. We spend a lot of time outdoors, camping, short hikes when we can manage it, things like that. So I suspected Lyme disease right away from the joint pain. It's a hallmark of it. Luckily, he tested positive for Lyme because not everyone does.
Okay.
And so his pediatrician immediately began treating him. And he just had standard treatment. She understood, luckily, the dangers of Lyme hanging around. So I think he had like 6 weeks of an antibiotic that works against Lyme. And the knee pain went away. His acute symptoms improved. Okay. But we noticed he didn't really get back to that great baseline he was at after treating OI. Well, what we didn't know and didn't figure out for another 3.5 years is that he had other tick infections. Most ticks now carry multiple infections.
Wow.
And there's about a dozen of them that are actually quite common. Some of them even more common in certain areas than Lyme disease.
Is that a blood test to find out, or how would you know?
Well, that's the problem. The blood tests for Lyme only catch about 60% of the cases. Okay. And it varies. These other infections are a wide range of things. So my son had Babesia, which is a single-celled organism, a paramecium. It's not a virus or bacteria. It's more of a parasite. Okay. He also had Bartonella, which is a bacteria. So it's got that similarity to Lyme. But Lyme is a very unique kind of bacteria. Bartonella is a different kind. So each of these infections is different, requires different testing, different treatments. But by the time we figured that out, he was very, very sick again and quite debilitated. He was missing a lot of school. And we started treating. Now, when tick infections have been in your body for that long, they are very difficult to treat. So, eventually over time, he improved little by little. He's now 27. Okay. And he's doing pretty well, but he still has those 3 tick infections. He still has ME/CFS. And as I said at the beginning, ME/CFS is at its heart an immune disorder. So our bodies don't fight off the infections as well as they should. So that makes it all harder. So he still has 3 tick infections and ME/CFS. As I said, our younger son recovered. I also got Lyme disease. Luckily, no so-called co-infections, just the Lyme. But I'm still being treated for that too. 15 years later, it's hard to get rid of.
Is your son still on medication then, your older son, or is he?
Oh, he and I both take
Okay.
like probably 100 pills a day,
Wow. Okay.
plus drops and other kinds of things. Yeah.
So walk me through, Sue, walk me through your day now. This is 2022, 20 years later since you were diagnosed. How do you start your day, end your day? What's your step process to get through your day to have a peaceful, joyful day? And okay, how am I going to deal with this? What's going on?
Well, self-care is vitally important. I mean, even more important than it is for everyone else, because if I don't take care of myself, I will crash and, be stuck in bed or on the couch and unable to do anything. So I've got much of my day is taken up with just caring for myself, but that's the way it has to be.
Sure.
I usually get up about 8 in the morning, wash up, brush my teeth and everything. I do some gentle yoga stretches on the floor every morning, and that helps very much. I have some issues with pain in my back and my shoulders, just like chronic things that can get flared up, and the morning yoga stretches really help. Now, because of the OI, I don't do any standing yoga poses.
Got it. Okay.
So my stuff's all on the floor, kneeling, sitting, that kind of thing. But that helps a lot. Breakfast, I have to have a healthy breakfast. I need plenty of protein. I generally eat a paleo type diet,
Okay.
which means it doesn't mean what most people think it means. It means no dairy, no grains, no alcohol. I can't have alcohol anyway because of ME/CFS.
Especially in the morning too. That'd be kind of that'd be rough.
Yeah.
It's a rough period.
So I was eating sauteed vegetables with eggs every morning, like either an omelet or a scramble, something like that. Make up a veggie hash and have some fried eggs on it. I just found out that I have a food sensitivity to egg whites, which may be because I was eating them every single day. So I'm trying to find some alternatives. So I'm now only kind of paleo because I am eating some whole grains, because there aren't a lot of other options.
Healthy diet though.
Yeah, exactly. So like whole oats. I try to have fruits and vegetables with every meal, so I have to take really good care of myself, which involves, it means I can't just grab a quick, pastry and look at the door. Yeah. Right.
What's your hydration like too throughout the day, especially starting in the morning?
Well, like I said, I am constantly drinking water. So I've got my glass here just in case my mug runs out. I really literally constantly drinking water all day. Herbal tea.
Got it.
I sometimes have a decaf coffee on weekends, but for the most part, no caffeine, no sugar, no alcohol. So it's mostly water and herbal tea.
Well, things that'll affect your blood pressure, things that'll affect your hydration ability or dehydrate your body, kind of want to avoid, I'm assuming, to make sure that orthostatic hypertension stays to a minimum per se.
Yeah, absolutely. So the rest of the world is told to reduce salt intake. And I have to make sure I have plenty. Yeah. So I have good quality sea salt, and make sure that I get plenty of that.
Good. And with your day starting going through, how much do you plan for to have energy to get your work done, your tasks done for the morning until, say, for example, lunchtime?
So every day is different, unfortunately. One of the most difficult things about living with many chronic illnesses, not just this one, is the unpredictability.
Yep.
So, I could have all kinds of plans and wake up and barely be able to drag myself out of bed. So that tells me I have to change my plans.
Plan B today.
Yeah, on a good day, and thanks to treatments, I have quite a few good days. I've got 2 to 3 hours of productive time after breakfast.
Got it.
So that's time when I feel well enough to, I'm a writer. It's time when I feel well enough to write. I do all my work in a recliner.
Okay.
As the other thing about the orthostatic problems is I have to keep my feet elevated if I'm sitting. So, that's my office. We've got a love seat recliner that's piled high with all my papers and planners and everything. And I've got my laptop, so I can get some work done in the mornings. Lunch, same thing, need healthy foods. I've got a whole new list of things I just found out I'm sensitive to that I'm trying to avoid now, which is making life a whole lot more difficult. But that goes hand in hand with ME/CFS because our immune systems overreact to certain things like allergens and viruses and underreact to other things like bacteria. So it's very common for people with ME/CFS to have worsened allergies, to suddenly develop food allergies. So when I first got sick 20 years ago, that same specialist who convinced me we had orthostatic intolerance, he also said, I described my GI problems, and he said, "You're probably dairy intolerant." And I said, "No, I'm not."
Not me.
I've been drinking milk every day since I was a kid. I love milk.
Yeah.
But he said, "Do me a favor, just for 2 weeks, eliminate dairy, and then go back on it and see what happens." And I did the 2 weeks and was like, it's not that different. And then I tried going back on the dairy.
Yes.
And I went, oh, it is the dairy. So a study showed that 30% of those with ME/CFS develop a dairy intolerance. Very common.
You're almost having to adjust your lifestyle and be aware of what's going on with your body, with your nutrition, everything going on daily at this point.
Right. Yeah, it's just constant. It's one of the things I write about in my book that there's a constant vigilance that you have to have with a chronic illness, and especially one like this where exertion makes you worse. I have to be constantly vigilant about what I eat, what I do, how long I've been up, what time it is.
A log also, like a daily log of what your diet is like, what your sleep's like. Are we still graphing things?
I am still graphing things. I just keep a simple calendar. Each month I print out a monthly page. And on each day I put a little notation in the upper right corner of exertion plus stress. So I rate each one on a 5-point scale because stress, it can affect me just as much as exertion. And on the lower left corner of the day, I just jot down a number 1 to 5 of how I was feeling. And my scale, 1 is great and 5 is stuck in bed.
So, and with everything going on, how do you keep your mindset able to stay motivated throughout the day? What's your routine like mindset wise?
Well, by now, I mean, this is just normal life for me.
Okay. So your routines allows a mindset to stay positive.
Right. Exactly. The other thing that's an essential part of my day is a nap after lunch.
I love naps. I don't even have any problems going on, but I love naps too.
I mean, I literally can, I'm like a phone with an old battery.
Perfect.
So no matter how well I charge it at night, by like 1 or 2 in the afternoon, I'm out of energy.
Is it your routine to eat before you take your nap or after you take a nap?
So I have lunch, and then that kind of food helps increase serotonin. It sets me up for a good nap, restful nap.
Good. And nap is 20, 30 minutes?
No, it's more like an hour.
Wow. Good.
Yeah. So I will, I love books. I love to read. So I'll settle myself down by reading for about 20 minutes. I make sure the room is dark and cool. I've got an eye mask and earplugs.
Perfect.
And then
stressors out that some people will go to sleep with their phone or read on an iPad. I'm a book person. I want a physical book, and if I'm tired within 5 minutes, I'm reading a book. I'm out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
same with me. So that helps settle me down and calm me. And then most days I am able to sleep like 45 minutes to an hour. Um,
good.
Sometimes it's whatever my body needs.
You adjust to it. There's no frustration if you need less or more. You go, okay, I'll go with it and kind of see how it goes.
This is what it is. Yeah. So like Saturday, I thought I was feeling pretty good. I was doing okay. But then, I woke up and it had been 90 minutes since I went to sleep. I was like,
Okay.
okay, I guess I needed that.
Yeah, yeah. And with everything going on, how does your family adjust to your daily adjustments? How's that variable? How's that formula work?
Well, again, we've been living with this for so long now. This is just normal life for us. So my husband's wonderful. Our boys are grown now. One is still living here temporarily. The other one is out of the house. And so it's mostly just us. The one who lives here, we don't see him very often. He's 24. He's got his own life. So it's
Okay,
mostly just the two of us. And at this point, my husband completely understands. He
great.
can tell from looking at me, what kind of a day it is. And if I'm having a bad day, he'll offer to run to the store or make dinner.
Good. That's our job, right? That's our job to take care of our wives. And with everything going on, how does your exercise routine work into? You said the morning yoga. Is there anything on the afternoon or weekends?
So again, people with ME/CFS have an intolerance to exercise.
Yep.
You have to be very, very careful. So two things have helped me increase my tolerance to exertion. Treating orthostatic intolerance is a big one because if every time you stand up, your heart rate goes to 130, you can't do anything.
I'm good. I've stood up and my exercise is over for the day. I'm good.
Exactly.
Great workout. That's great.
Every time I got a heart rate monitor to help me with this,
Mhm.
I strapped it on. I was like, I'm going to try just a short 15-minute walk. I bent down to tie my shoes and it started beeping at me because my heart rate was already 120. I was like, I haven't left the house yet.
Come
Yeah,
on, give me a
at the time,
chance.
I think my limit was like around 105. And I was like, how's this going to work? So that's why I mentioned what our boys took when they were young, the Florinef.
Good.
Older son and I both take low dose beta blockers.
Beta blockers. Okay. Okay.
So at a very low dose. So they bring that heart rate down into more of a normal range.
Got it. And if you're going to go for example, going for a walk,
Yeah.
would you take that beta blocker an hour before?
Well, the thing is, and I learned this the hard way, it's better with ME/CFS to take a long acting beta blocker. You take it before bedtime
Okay.
and it stays effective until evening the next day. Now I can see its effectiveness starting to wane. Like I can't take a walk after dinner.
Got
I
it.
know my heart rate's too high at that point.
Wow.
But I can now manage a walk in the morning. The other thing that has helped is treating the immune dysfunction because that is at the heart of it. It's what's behind. It's the engine that drives all of these symptoms. So it's tricky because we're not autoimmune and we're not immune deficient. We're stuck somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
So typical treatments for those two kinds of conditions don't work for us. But there are some immune modulators that help to not boost or suppress the immune system, but normalize it. And those have helped my son and I a lot.
It
So,
helps almost keep your body out of good homeostasis. So
mhm.
you can balance things out and deal with your daily stressors of life.
Right, right. So with those, I am able to take walks. For me, it's usually just like 20 or 30 minutes at a slow pace. I do wear a heart rate monitor,
Good.
and the limit for people with ME/CFS is like way lower than it would be for a healthy person. But with the low dose beta blockers, I can manage a walk as long as I'm feeling good that day. If
That's the variable, correct?
if I have symptoms, forget it. I can't do anything.
And with everything going on long term, does it affect your overall heart and or body's organs on the blood pressure changes, the the things like that. Has there been change that way internally?
I haven't seen any yet.
Okay.
It is, of course, a concern. What are the long-term impacts of this? I am hoping that by trying to treat, I'm really focused on treating not the symptoms, but the underlying causes. As much as I can dig down to the root causes. Um, and we do now have it's still not very many, but about a dozen specialists in the US who have spent their lives, researching and treating patients, and do have the expertise, to suggest treatments. So I work with someone in New York City.
Well, it seems like you're almost okay. Now I've kind of whittled this down to 5, 6 things I can do every day and control these variables. So the stress on my body, physically and mentally, is at a minimum based on what I can control versus my environment around me.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, that's a huge takeaway. And walk me through your blog, your videos. Have you become an advocate for people that are dealing with the same type of chronic illnesses beyond CSF? How have you helped them? What kind of feedback have you had so far?
Well, my blog is semi-focused on ME/CFS. Any articles on treatment or research are focused on ME/CFS. And just a point that I think your audience will be interested in, now we are looking at millions and millions of cases of what they're calling long COVID.
Good. That's my next. Okay.
And many of those cases are ME/CFS.
That could almost be the initial infection, the trigger.
Is the initial infection, exactly. So with all these infections that have been studied that are triggering infections, in almost all cases, 10% of the people go on to develop ME/CFS.
Wow.
So mono is a good example. Very common infection. Almost the whole population is exposed to it by the time they're an adult. It's in everyone's bloodstream.
Yeah.
But 10% of the people who get it, often kids and teens, won't recover and will instead develop ME/CFS. Well, with SARS family viruses, and we saw this with an earlier SARS outbreak, I think it was in Toronto,
Okay.
5 to 10 years ago, before COVID, it was 25% developed ME/CFS. And that's what we're seeing now with COVID, there are a huge number of people now chronically ill. And unfortunately, they're often being told, we don't know what's wrong with you and there's nothing we can do about it.
Huge. That's every person I deal with in my office that have had. For example, I had COVID. I had symptoms for about 4 months. Patients they've been hospitalized for 3 or 4 weeks. Even longer than that too.
Yeah.
The long-term effects have not been. They've kind of been brushed aside. Well, you'll get better eventually. You'll
Right,
eventually
right.
get better.
And they may not. I mean, that's the sad part. But they can improve with treatment, but nobody's telling them that. So I have kind of adjusted my blog and my videos to include those with long COVID, because it's a population that's being ignored and that is desperate for help. Look up hashtag long COVID on Twitter, for example, and you will find so many patients suffering and, being told by doctors that they don't know what's wrong with them, that there's nothing to do, actually being told by doctors that they should exercise, which is only going to make them worse.
And I think doctors they just don't know, or naive or ignorant.
Right.
Well, this is just we have to deal with this as we come. So we may not know for a couple of years, but can someone like your blog, your videos, do you like people to go to both, or is there a certain preference on one?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how you like to take your information in. There are some things I would only post on my blog or only make a video about, but generally, I cover a lot of topics in both places. I figure some people, particularly when your audience is chronically ill, some people it's easier to watch or listen, others it's easier to read. So, whatever.
How you learn, correct? How you absorb information.
Right. Now, the other part of my blog and my videos is more about emotional coping.
That's okay.
And more the inspirational side of things. How do you cope with this? How do you, and that's why, I wrote the book, Finding a New Normal.
Good.
It's based on those kinds of things. And that is applicable to anyone with any kind of chronic medical condition.
And I think once you've figured out how to cope with the emotional stress of a chronic illness, now you're more willing to look for help and do the research and
Right.
do and looking at the videos, looking at the blogs, and now learning, understanding how to cope with it once you've actually gone through the mental coping of it. Correct.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic.
I
All
mean,
right.
it's huge, and I've been through it myself.
That's the thing. You're the advocate. I'm just going to ask you. Hey, got something going on? Let's go talk to Susan, see what she says.
Yeah.
But it allows people to really get the idea of, okay, do I have something or not? Maybe, but what am I going through, and how do I know if this is real or not? Like I said, especially with long COVID, people have no idea. They're trying to live normal lives, and all of a sudden, boom, another crash. Boom, now you just don't feel good. Boom, I need a couple more days off of work. Boom, I can't take care of my kids today. Am I going through depression? Is it secondary? There's too many questions to ask themselves versus getting the right help, which I think you become a great advocate to help people understand, at least from a narrowed sense, how to start looking for help and what to experience and what to expect.
Right.
Through your book, to give them an idea of, hey, there's someone else dealing with this. How to reach out to them, so because there's some similarities to what I'm going through now.
Absolutely. So, people with long COVID right now, they're being told it's all in their head.
Mm-hmm.
They're being told they're not getting well because they don't want to get well, which is like the craziest thing I've ever heard. They're being told to exercise, which actually makes this condition worse.
Mm-hmm.
I should point out, with people who have lingering symptoms after COVID, there are plenty of cases where there's been lung damage or cardiac damage. And that's a separate, that
The
is
medical side.
also chronic illness, but a separate diagnosis. Yeah.
And then the last few minutes of the show right now, too, Susan, is how do you want people to connect with you? What is the reason they should connect with you, and what are your resources for them?
So, like I said, my blog and the videos on YouTube cover ME/CFS and long COVID and Lyme.
Good.
And associated tick infections in terms of treatments and research.
Good.
The blog and the YouTube channel and the book cover more the coping side of things.
Good.
What is your daily life going to look like? How do you adjust to this new normal? How do you bring some joy back into your life? How do you find peace? How do you maintain and build strong relationships, which is a huge challenge when you're chronically ill.
It's almost relationships, but also support, if you want to call it combination of both, correct?
Well, that's true too. Yeah, but I'm just talking about relationships in terms of maintaining relationships with the friends and family that you had before you got sick. It becomes very difficult. Some people do not respond well when a friend or family member gets chronically ill. By that, I mean they don't cope well. They have difficulty accepting how severe it is or how it affects their life. I think in some cases there's an underlying fear that this came out of nowhere. That could happen to me.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like I don't want to become the next, in some people's sense, next infected person with this. It's tough, and some people just don't deal with emotions well. Right. So for them to get emotional would be like, hey, this is not what I do.
Right. And it's also, some people just avoid you because they don't know what to say.
That's huge.
So, all of this I cover in my book because relationships are so important to us, even more so than when we were healthy, and so much more difficult to maintain when your life is defined by limits and restrictions. Wow. So that's a big aspect too.
Wow. Well, thank you, Susan. Anything else to wrap up the show? Anything else? I think you covered everything. And my takeaway is, how do you deal with the coping mechanisms. Okay, now I've been diagnosed with this chronic illness, maybe CSF, maybe long-term COVID at that point, or whatever it might be. Now, how do you deal with the mental, emotional side through your book, for one, and then going through your resources? How do I now find the right doctors, the right testing, right medication if need be, the right aspect of finding my resources to keep myself healthy as possible?
Right. I mean, you're absolutely right. It's a double-pronged thing. You have to figure out how to live with it emotionally, but you can really help yourself by improving your condition.
Good.
And unfortunately, very often, particularly with illnesses like mine that aren't well understood by the medical establishment, it relies on either patience, or if you're not up to it, ask a friend or family member, to do some research, to look for blogs or videos online that talk about treatments, to look up studies and articles that you can share with your doctor. I've done that so many times, particularly in the beginning of my illness.
And I'm not someone to reinvent the wheel, so I'd rather just ask Susan exactly, hey, how do I look this up? Even though I have a different illness,
Right.
How do I now find the research to go through this? And you, as an advocate for people like that, I think have done a great, if you want to call it, vocation for people that are in need. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right. We'll end the show. Well, and thank you for being on the show. My audience will appreciate it. I'm going to put this everywhere, Facebook, Instagram, as podcasts that are on too. So I'll end it, but stay on the StreamYard for me. We'll talk in the back office. Okay.
Hey, thanks.
Thank you guys for watching.